A very good morning to all of you. This is the series of webinars that we are doing to understand the EU directives on standards. That is the labor standards and the environmental standards known as the EU due diligence directive. As you many of you in tobacco are already part of the SEBI due diligence, so you know exactly what the due diligence directive calls for. So I don't need to preach to many of you, and many of you have also attended our event uh, before. What we intend to do today is to make a small tobacco specific presentation to set the context of the study. Then we would look then we will go to Mr. Mahesh Kumar, who is in tobacco board, and he just came back from a trip. He is very busy, so we will go to him for his interventions, and then to Praveen Babu from ITC. Praveen Babu is, looking after the sustainability leaf tobacco business of ITC. ITC is doing a lot of work on sustainable business practice. Then we move to Anuradha and Meghna for Anuradha to present the core part of the EU due diligence directive. From there, we move to Anu. You may need to go down a little bit. From there, we move to Y.A. Chowdary, the Secretary of the Indian Tobacco Association, and ask him. He will be talking about how the exports are working, and then we go on to the scientific CTRI. We already have the CTRI team with us. Dr. Prasad and S. Kasturi Krishnan, both of them are there, and ask them about a lot of work they are doing on sustainable business practices. Given this program, may I now directly move to setting the context of the event today, and Anu, you may upload the presentation. So while the presentation is set up, the objective of today's event is to find out that what can be done, where the companies are likely to change their processes, what kind of cost is they are likely to incur, what are the likely requirements of this due diligence directive, and as well as the other directives that European Union is coming up with, and what can be done together to resolve many of the issues. Anu, can you put a view slideshow, please? Just to take you through this, next slide, please. Tobacco and tobacco products are pretty complex in the global sustainability regime, because a number of global sustainability theory do not apply to tobacco and tobacco products because of the WHO or some other institutes. Now, if you look at the global gap, the exclusions are for the tobacco and tobacco product. If you look at the Rainforest Alliance, the exclusion is again for the tobacco and tobacco product and few other products. Given this scenario, what is happening in the European Union is that there are private standards by the EU importers. There are standards set by on agriculture which applies to tobacco, and there are also certain tobacco specific standards. Given this overall picture, let me come to the core part of our discussion today. India is a large producer, in fact, the second largest producer of tobacco. While there can be a lot of, against tobacco consumption, while there is a lot of push against tobacco consumption, there is no doubt that this is a big export item impacting the life of a number of farmers and growers, as well as in the manufacturing. We do have, manufacturing at different levels. Now, as of now, we are mostly exporting flue-cured virgin variety of tobacco. So there is one variety, but we produce a lot different varieties. We produce bidi, cigarette, different types of tobacco, and the core part is that most of the studies on labor standards, health standards in tobacco actually in the past focused on the berry industry or the lower ranking ones. There are very few studies which are looking actually on the export oriented industries and how sustainable business practice happens there. Now, now that the world is looking into sustainability and European Union has come out with many regulations, a large part of their regulations actually apply to the tobacco and tobacco products because they fall under the agri zone. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Huh. So the so basically, as I said, EU is a large importer of tobacco. It continues to be a large importer of tobacco. Now, while I talk about this part, we also need to understand that we have, we are not exporting alternatives, tobacco alternatives. Okay, so there is a confusion in the minds, like there is a tobacco products, there are tobacco alternatives. In India, tobacco alternatives are banned. The EU from time to time also imposes a number of directives. Many of these directives are under the tobacco manufacturing. Now, when you go to tobacco directives, you find that there is also directives related to manufacturing, packaging, labeling, talking about the harmful impact of tobacco. There are no directive per se looking at, the MRL levels or something like that. The other thing that you need to keep in mind with respect to tobacco and tobacco product is that there is a very limited role of the EU importers in India because they are not allowed to invest in the entire value chain of tobacco. So there is a investment is mostly done by the Indian company. There is an FDI restrictions and there are certain requirements. Next slide, please. However, as you see, there is a lot of, if you go to the website of various associations and organizations working with tobacco, and that will facilitate the discussions today. Many of them are going into something called the good agricultural practice, and they are talking about input use reduction, pest management, post harvest handling, and so on and so forth. Here, one of the point of discussion that I would like to bring to your notice is that there are also many company level efforts that are happening, but the point is that global gap certifications do not apply to tobacco and tobacco products. So when we are talking about gap in tobacco, one understanding has to be thought through, and that is a question I am putting forward to the tobacco board and also to CTRI. When they talk about gap, are they talking about India gap? Are they talking about the British Tobacco Association has put in certain British and America tobacco organizations have also put in certain practices? Which gap are we talking about is a core question in the tobacco supply chain. Next slide, please. Given this scenario, the objective of our study is to actually understand the sustainable directive, how it impacts our core export sectors. As you can see, tobacco is a major export sector and we are a major exporter of that. And how do we become a larger player in the EU company value chain, especially under the circumstances that European Union and India is doing a trade agreement, and that agreement also allows us to bring forward scope for getting more investment, scope for capacity building, scope for joint support, and scope to actually mitigate the labor and environmental risk. Given this scenario, can you go to the next slide, please? Anu, can you go to the next slide, please? Given this scenario, what we see is that the tobacco supply chain is very well documented by the tobacco board. You have several players in the supply chain from production, curing, processing, auction, marketing, and exporting. Now, the questions that you need to think through the seminars will be like, what are the what are the informations and the regulatory gaps? One of the information and and the outcome of the information and regulatory gap. An outcome of your information and regulatory gap may be that your products are getting rejected in the EU market, but you don't know why it is getting rejected and some of the issues that you may be facing. My next set of question will be compliance related, because many of the companies are themselves putting in compliance, or they are under the SEBI compliance in India. So they exactly know what are the compliance requirement by India, what are the compliance requirement by the European Union, and are there any compliance requirement differences, due diligence and certification process needed. Many of you are in fact going and getting it. We have ITC got due diligence certificates and many other things. Philip Morris, many of you have it. So please do talk about how did you go it, what are the good part after getting that? Did you find a vast difference in the way you are supplying and so on? The third part is related to the compliance due diligence components, which is the labor related regulations. Following the minimum wage, no child labor, work hours, labor health and safety. You may move to the next page, Anu. Labor health and safety and all the other due diligence requirement, which is very much applicable in tobacco, because there is a lot of studies which show that you are exposed to hazardous waste and hazardous conditions which can impact. And whether there is a trade union or other, what is the system of escalation of any issues that the labor face. Then we move into the environmental risk, greenhouse deforestation, chemical pesticide. Now here the core part of my question is that although we are talking about, everybody is talking about gap, which gap are they talking about? Because global gap does not apply. So is it India gap or a self-determined gap or a good agricultural practices that is laid down by the importers? And if they have laid it down, what kind of support do they give? I have already spoken about the investment related issues, because the issues that come from the EU side is that we are not allowed to invest. On the other hand, the EU directive says that the EU companies are supposed to support their MSMEs. Now the question is, how do they support their MSMEs if they are not allowed to invest? Money, that's like a legal issue and a gap. And do you at all need that investment is a question that I put forward to the companies. And then comes the last question, what kind you support you need, and that support may vary by where you are in the export supply chain. So the support that tobacco board need will be very different from the support that companies need. Next slide, please. So that's a thank you slide. So let me close this. Can you close the presentation, Anu? And then we move on to the program. And let me just check if Mr. Can you close this slide, Anu, so that I can move on to the program and check if is Mr. Mahesh there?
Ma'am, actually, I got a call from Mr. Mahesh. He's facing some technical problem at his end, so he'll not be able to join yet. But he's trying to join.
Okay.
As soon as he joins, we'll about to know that.
Okay, if he is facing a problem, you can even connect him to the phone and we can have a chat. But before we do that, may I directly move into Praveen Babuji. Praveen Babu is from ITC. Sir, over to you, please. You have been with us for the 2 programs, right? So you
Right,
have
sir.
heard Anuradha before, therefore we put you across earlier than Anuradha, so that if you want to say something, you can also use that opportunity. Over
Yeah,
to you,
sure.
please.
Sure. And I would do my proper due diligence before starting my thing, because you are given a good pretext of experts being present over here. So speaking before them would put me, a lot of limelight. So still, I'll try to do my best, ma'am, on this. Thank you, ICRIER team and fellow colleagues from different industry experts. I really thank for this opportunity. Let me just introduce myself. My name is Praveen. So I've been associated with ITC from more than a decade. So we are working in tobacco industry. I'm reaching out to you all from Tobacco SB of ITC. So as a tobacco division. So my current role is to look after the sustainability and ESG parameters over the tobacco division is concerned. I think there was a good introduction, ma'am, by Dr. Arpita on in terms of what are the regulation perspectives and all. So, not going into the governance part, what I'll try to reach out and explain it to you today is. So, when it comes to these things, what are the main topics that EUCS3D mainly covering? So, what are the things that we are focusing on? So, when we understand this regulation on a broadly, we have. Broadly categorize them into two different elements. So we have something on human rights and we have on environmental issues. So, right, as already pretext given by ma'am. So when it comes to the human rights, the areas where the EU CSDD is focusing on us to work on is on forced labor and child labor, and right to have collective bargaining, unsafe working conditions, unfair wages, and discrimination. So when we talk about these human rights, this is not a completely new subject. Only CUSDD is talking about. So this been in our purview from a long time, and these been as our sustainability and ESG parameters to look forward from different directions as well. So this is further strengthening in a different dimension. And at the same time, coming to the environment, be it climate changes in GHG emissions, the biodiversity losses, pollution in terms of water, soil, and air, and deforestation and waste management. These are the areas where they are trying to focus on. One interesting factor that they're bringing us to this is having a due diligence in place. So just like unlike CSRD, they have also given us this omnibus proposal, which has extended us for 1 more year. But the different requirements in terms of governance part, what we are trying to do. I'll try to do the requirements in a different section. So what we're trying to do is that when we have to have a due diligence, we have an integrated due diligence into policies. We have to do them, integrate them into our policies. That is what ITC is doing into our core sustainability principles and priorities, like the human rights and environment, covering all the major facets, employee code of conduct, ethics and policies and all those things. We're trying to bring them into our integrated policies and preferences. Then coming to the potential adverse impacts and risks, identifying these actual risks is very important. Whether you act upon is a secondary thing, but have you done a preliminary scanning on all the aspects of risk that they could cause potentially? First, identification of this is very important. So what ITC does is we maintain a risk library outlining and identifying the risks and how to address them and track them on a quarterly basis, which will be reviewed directly by the management committee of the division and at the overall corporate level. And we are also trying to follow the supply chain due diligence, which has latestly conducted in 2023. We have also have our supply chain due diligence we have conducted during last before year. As ma'am was mentioning, we have the certification for that as well. And we are also following BRSR to prevent and mitigate any potential adverse impact. Supplier code of conduct has been very important. So not only the agreements taken in PO and work orders, but also having them trained. Covering the 70% of all the the suppliers has to be very much important thing. So we're also trying to comply with the BRSR guidelines. So thus helping us in preventing and mitigating the potential adverse impacts across our supply chain. And grievance mechanism, this is one thing is very important. See, our understanding of grievance mechanism, probably the other day the ma'am was speaking on the importance of it, how we have to take it forward, and have adding that into the principles of UNDP principle 31, taking the inspiration from there. We're also taking forward to further strengthen our things and public reporting and communication. So the customers, so these are the few points that I wanted to bring it to you just before getting into in detailing. So as ITC, what we're trying to do is incorporating these things of policies and guidelines into our thing. When on ground, when we're trying to do this on ground, what we're trying to do here is taking all the parameters into the picture, and we're trying to create a training and awareness at a mass production, be it with farming community, be it with the fellow peers, and with the help of tobacco board, because we have a governing body in place in FCV regions where tobacco board is there. So we work hand in hand, we take their support and we seek their guidance and help to understand things better, and we work in hand, creating the awareness among the training and awareness among the farming community, because these are the areas of human and labor rights, what we're talking about, the forced labor, child labor. These aspects are not cannot only be covered by any corporate or any medium or any enterprise. It has to be done with a collaborative approach. So we are trying to follow in that particular thing. As ITC, what we are trying to do here is we have, as we say, we have an application called ITC Mars. So when we try to cover the data capture, So as ma'am was rightly mentioning about the gaps, so the good agriculture practices, whichever has been established with the help of Tobacco Board and CTRI and with the R&D that ITC has. So and with the fellow peers in the industry. So we established good agriculture practices. What customers are asking right now is the customers are being very stringent, be it from EU regime customers or from other regions. They're asking us to do the reporting. Ma'am, one important facet I'm trying to hear is the customer reporting of be it crop and all the ESG parameters and sustainability parameters is a mandate. So we have to report for all the crop supplies of all the cropping areas and farmers information to the customers in their portals. Something called STP, Sustainable Tobacco Program, is there. So the consortium of big giants, as you are mentioning, be it British American Tobacco, Imperial Brands, JTI, Onaiken. So there are some consortium of premium customers. They are formed into a group. So they are using World Favor as a portal to do all these reportings into the framework. There, whatever the due diligence I'm talking about, be it climate, crop, soil, health, natural habitats, biodiversity. These are the aspects that they're trying to cover. So broadly, all the elements, not only CSDDD, the remaining elements also, they're asking us to capture the data on farm monitoring. So when we say farm monitoring, the field force which we have, they will be conducting a farm monitoring on a daily basis to the field level. What crop practices that they're doing, what good agriculture practices they're doing, and where they are growing. All these informations are being captured into an application. So when they do that, they follow for compliance. If there is any compliance, they will be reporting all those things. And the important part is, they say when they say due diligence, you have to assess the risks. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to do any non-compliance identification, report them. So there is a framework called prompt actions and non-compliances. So whenever there is a prompt action that has been identified, it will be documented. It has to be documented saying that, yeah, there is one particular farmer, there is one particular community where there is a challenge. For example, safe working environment, usage of PPE, non-aware of, forget about being using of PPE. They are not aware of what is PPE. Aware of being PPE, availability of PPE becomes a challenge. Availability of the PPE, usage becomes challenge. When usage, harsh conditions become a challenge. So we have to address them one-on-one. So first, create an awareness. Then make sure that the material is available. Then make sure that they know how to use them and what is the importance of it. And not being aware of anything, not being availability, all of these things shall be identified, something called prompt action. So we identify the prompt action. When identified prompt action, we will sit with the farmer. We will make sure that what is the root cause of it. Is it the unawareness? Is it the unavailability? Is it the application issue? Ma'am, because it's in India. It's a hot zone region. So when you say in Andhra and Karnataka places, at the time of May, April, farmer is asked or labor is asked to put on a PPE kit. It is not a practical possible thing. But we have to make sure that he understands the importance of it. So we're trying to work on those aspects. So the prompt action identifies what is the root cause, what is the solution. We work with the farmer and make sure that the problems get resolved. And we'll also do a follow-up activity called reassurance. So after 4 weeks, within the period of 4 weeks, we go back to that same farmer again. Is he repeating the same issue? What is the challenge? We address that. So this is something called prompt action reassurance. And it will be followed by something called unannounced visit. So these are all things which will help us in firming up our due diligence. So, and not only that, the customers are also asking what is your standard operating procedures that you have established and how are you following it. And on an annual basis, we have to do this reporting. On an alternate year basis, they're asking for the assessments. I'm sure during my lecture or the class today, Mr. Rajshekar, who is the Vice President of Export, is supposed to join. You have to excuse us because he's traveling. It's right now in the flight, so he could not be able to join the session. So I'm extending his words in terms of how the customer stringency is. So the customers are making sure, like, let me take a quote of an entrance examination. The sustainability and ESG parameters become like an entrance examination. We have to clear this entrance examination. Then there goes the group discussion where they're assessing all of the data that we have submitted. Then there goes the personal interview, which is like a third-party assessment. They're coming down. Then after completion of all those things, then only we are getting enrolled. So then only we are allowed to start our giving our samples, approach the customer. Boss, we have done the first clearance. We have cleared the first stage gates. Now we are ready in terms of sustainability parameters or ESG. We are ready to do that part. So that's how stringent the customers have become. And yes, it cannot be done overnight. So we've been preparing for this. The industry is being preparing for this. Yeah, some are gained over a period of time. Some are slowly in terms of things. As you rightly mentioned, MSME, small industries will have definitely challenges in these parameters. And not only small enterprises, large enterprises will have further challenge because we have to anticipate what is happening tomorrow. I'll take an inspiration of our group head saying, preparing for day after tomorrow. It is not tomorrow anymore. So anticipate that and prepare for that is something really challenging. So we're working on all these parameters. Yes, are we bound to do this? Is it mandate to completely follow up all these things? Yes. If you don't do, we'll lose an opportunity. And we're losing an opportunity not only to a company, it will be a harm to industry. The way ITC looks at as a responsible thing, we and Tobacco Board thinks that anything happens, if a customer losing as an export opportunity, it is not a customer going from ITC to another customer. It is not moving from one region to another region. He will be moving from India. So when he moves that, getting back him is a very important and very challenging thing. So we have to make sure those things are there. So that is where, as an industry, we should work forward to this, because the ESG parameters, all these customer reports have already moved. It is not moving, already moved from being a voluntary thing to a mandate thing. So we are working on these things. And if I have to add further on in terms of the biodiversity aspects that we have, the net zero journey that we have, all deforestation free and deforestation conversion free activities. And even let us take an example of EUDR. It is no time that tobacco might get involved into EUDR. So we have to be prepared on all these parameters as well. So these are all some inputs that I'm giving from our end, what ITC is doing on this front. So we're working with entire value chain, right from the farmers, right from the governance, right from the suppliers, right from all the people, stakeholders across the industry. We're working to make sure this industry sustains and gains advantage. If we take this as an opportunity and stand ourselves as the best, I think we can be able to make ourselves ahead of the anyone in the world. I think we have an opportunity here. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Praveen ji. I have two questions, but
Yes,
after
please.
this, I would give it to the others because a lot of work that you are doing is also Philip Morris and others are doing. So you are working together, right? Yeah, the big suppliers are working together. So my three core question to you is that one is that there is an FDI restriction. How big is that issue? Is it impacting us, or we are okay with that restriction in terms of getting the investment? Because this directive is, for the first time, it is telling companies to invest in their backward supply chain and MSMEs. Now they cannot do that. How big is it?
Ma'am, if I understand your question correctly, so the investments in terms of our preparedness is what you're saying?
Yes, in investment in the supply chain, because the directive says that the EU companies have to invest in their supply chain down to the MSMEs and help the MSMEs. Now, they cannot help the MSMEs. They have to rely on Indian companies to help the MSMEs because they cannot bring in FDI as per our law and regulation. Is FDI an important thing that we need to look into to liberalize from the Indian point of view?
Ma'am, I think if I were to give my opinion, not to comment, but my opinion on this matter would be, yes, it is not possible, and we should not be looking for FDI at this point of time. But as far as the first question is concerned, preparing our supply chain partners, not only the EU guidelines, even our Indian guidelines of BRSR, as per our NBGRP, is also saying that our supply chain partners also follow the code of conduct, or the responsible sourcing and supply chain parameters. It is not only, let us not look at from the lens that EU or US or someone else is pushing from the directive. So even our Indian governance, even our Indian regulations in terms of also focusing on strengthening our supply chain partners. And not only in terms of this partner, because the mandate of net zero going forward and having our scope 3 emissions calculations into the picture, not only looking at as one company, as one industry, we have to look at are the downstream as well, not only the upstream. So we have to make sure that entire value chain is sustainable. So it is an overall cumulative responsibility that we need to take up.
As I understand that if companies are not following it, they lose their credibility and they may also lose their business. Okay, that's the risk. Now, if
Yes.
the companies are following it, does it enhances cost a lot, or if you plan for it, it does not do that? It is, you can kind of you can come to a break even point, or is it a cost that needs to be supported by a carefully designed subsidy by the government or something like that?
Ma'am, of course. I think I'll answer this question in two parts. The first part is, of course, it is very cost incurring thing, because it is not easy to establish things. It is not easy to outreach. It is not easy to create awareness or train them and support them on all the functionality. So it is definitely a cost incurring thing. It is not an easy part. But at the same time, at what cost? The cost of not doing will give us a more cost of losing an opportunity or losing a business. I'm not talking here with a business perspective, because the ITC's core principle of keeping India first. So sab saath bade. So with that progressive element, losing an opportunity, cost of not doing will be a very big cost that we have to pay at a later stage. And of course, we have to take this up. It is not ready at this point of time. And the second part of the question that I would like to answer here is the way ESG things are moving in, ma'am. So I was saying, it has started with the as a terms of EHS. From there, it has become something else. Today, it become ESG, and it become sustainability. It became voluntary to mandatory thing. So it is not happening overnight. So we also need to be prepared and get geared up, particularly for that. Today, if you ask me, are we realizing the cost benefit for all the, be it sustainability and ESG and due diligence parameters? Am I getting an additional cost of it? No. Are we monetizing it today? No. Are we talking about the green credits and carbon credits, whatever it is there? Are we in a position to do that? No, because the guidelines are firming up. The industry is learning. The companies are learning. They're trying to evolve and adjust, and they're trying to tailor stitch within their value chain how they can be able to incorporate. And it is, I'm sure, not only today EU is speaking about it. Tomorrow, even Indian guidelines will be so firm that interstate transfers or anything inter-industry transfer things also will come to a case where you have to follow these guidelines. Now, customer is asking, by scanning a product, how sustainable the product is. So when I'm trying to demonstrate a traceability, how can I demonstrate a traceability without investing all these things? And it is becoming a mandate. Customer is asking. Forget about the EU or something. Today, my Indian customer, by purchasing one biscuit or one product, he's asking, is it coming from the traceable source? But are they willing to pay for it? Yeah, that's a question mark. Because we have to suddenly can't uplift the table of the cost of any product or a platform, right? Yes, we have to slowly do that part. If you look at the cost optimization at this point of time, we might lose the bigger picture. So we have to work on that. Yes, it will be an industrial burden. It will be that's where the government support and big industry support. We have to work together. It is not only subsidies that will work. It is not only the largest industries. They'll work on investing money. It will work. It has to come from a collective thing. It has to come from everybody. Because
Thank you
one
very
person.
much.
Sure.
It's a public-private multi-stakeholder partnerships that you are talking about.
Correct.
This is a very good beginning, Mr. Praveen Babu, and because you have set up the stage. Anuradha and anybody have any questions, then you can bring it up, and then we move to Anuradha. You.
I don't have any questions, but yes, thank you to Mr. Babu for a very, very nice exposition.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And we move over to Anuradha. If you have any question, Mr. Babu, please do come back after once we start working on all the other presentation. Over
Sure.
to you, Anuradha.
Thanks, Arpita. I think I'll just flip my presentation a little bit to take on from, to actually make it more relevant and make it flow better with what Mr. Babu has just presented. Just 1 second. I'm going to. You can see my screen now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this was actually towards the end that I had put, but yes, to kind of the very last question that you had asked, Arpita, in terms of what are really the practical implications, and I think Praveenji has explained it very candidly and nicely in terms of the fact that this is not going to be a simple exercise. I like the positivity and the optimism with which he presented, and that certainly, from a compliance mode perspective, that is certainly what needs to be kept in mind. But if we were to look at this, and he's right, and you also made this point in your opening remarks, that there is some experience because of our own ESG disclosure requirements, and Mr. Babu has also explained how progressively that has become from voluntary to mandatory for certain aspects and things like that. And the whole relationship with the value chain that in terms of principles which will have to be followed if we were to implement in letter and spirit what the EU directive is talking about. So yes, in terms of this is not exhaustive, but in terms of the various components that Indian industry has to think about, a lot of these elements are already there. It's just that the mapping and the data collection on the specific elements, if it is GHG emissions right now under the SEBI directives, it will have to multiply to both the labor-related compliance pursuant to ILO conventions, to the various other multilateral environmental agreements that we're talking about, plus putting in place the climate action plan also, which is what I'll get into in terms of the overarching framework that EU has. He also mentioned the importance of capacity training for supplies in the entire supply chain. Actually, it is both upstream and downstream, for which the core entity that is impacted, the core business entity, based on the threshold levels of the EU directive, will need to be equipped. So what does this need? This will need funds, expertise, systems to measure, to report, investments in various training and capacity building activities. There will be issues relating to profitability and competitiveness. There are model contractual clauses that the EU directive already talks about, so that will have to be replicated also. There would be significant reputational and operational risks, and of course, coming with that, the opportunity. Just one little element that I'd like to add to what Praveen has already said, it is that what the EU directive talks about in slightly open terms is the idea of a third-party verification. I did not see that reflected in, maybe ITC already has that system in place, but what we are talking about is not a company certifying by itself. That in itself may not be sufficient. To have a third-party verifier independently validating and independently verifying that what is being done by a particular entity to ensure compliance, that is exactly what the overarching spirit of the EU directive is all about. Now, who should these third-party verifiers be? Can they be an Indian entity? Will it necessarily have to be a EU entity? Again, the EU directive is delightfully silent in terms of who, whether it should be an accredited verifier. This is unlike their other regulations, whether we have CBAM or whether we have the EU deforestation one. They talk about the fact that the validation will have to be done by EU accredited verifiers. There is a separate EU regulation for accreditation. In this case, there is really no such specific element. And just before I lose that train of thought, therefore, these are the type of elements, if in a mutual recognition or some kind of a bilateral deal as an annex or a side letter or to the current ongoing negotiations, if those elements can be worked for, a recognition or kind of an equivalence to what is already being done, the fact that certain India-based validators and verifiers would be sufficient to do it, because all of this will have an implication in terms of compliance cost, the practicality, and the fact that we are able to put in place a mechanism that we don't have to keep running for EU-related validation if there is an automatic kind of a recognition. But with this, let me move on to the overarching theme and the, to set in, I'm doing it a little backwards in a sense, but I thought it would flow best with what really has been discussed so far. Just to set the context, I think you're right that most people in the audience would have an idea of what we are talking about in terms of the legal requirements of the EU Sustainability and Due Diligence Directive. It has an impact on both EU and non-EU entities, and I'll get to the threshold. They have these threshold factors which have been put into place. What it talks about, the character of this directive is that of, as the name suggests, it's a directive to all EU member states to put in place their own legislative mechanisms, and it sets in place minimum standards. So what we are really expecting, if you were to ask me as a lawyer, what are what is my legal compliance requirement? The answer is wait and watch, because unless we have the specific EU member state legislations, we would not be completely sure. We have an idea now, but we would not be completely sure in terms of what all exactly you'll have to put in place. The broad theme of the directive is that it really shifts the responsibility and the burden, not just in terms of reporting, but also in terms of compliance. It's more like EU saying that do not look at the state or the governments to implement laws and regulations. You, as a responsible corporate actor, will have to do a bunch of things to make sure that everybody that you're dealing with is complying with laws and regulations. So it's, in other words, what it really means is it's not simple enough to say that that ITC has complied, and as Praveen mentioned, that this is something which you're already doing. You're already trying to verify and validate what each of the actors that you're dealing with, not just your subsidiaries, not just people in your direct control, legally within your control, but entities that are supplying, as well as entities through which you'll be undertaking transportation, distribution. Each of those, their actions on certain set parameters that this directive talks about, you are responsible for that. The onus is on the company. So in other words, there is no requirement for governments to change their laws, because again, unlike a few other EU-related regulations, etc., where they're looking at, what is the law that is in place in a country. This directive is not bothered about whether the law in India is actually talking about equivalence. It is more in terms of actions of the actors who are supplying into the EU market that that is brought into question and scrutiny. Companies will have to manage risks and, as I mentioned, build capacity in the supply chain. Third-party verification, I explained that. And also ensure that as a responsible actor, you're taking proactive action to identify and fix the whatever problems that may arise in the compliance. Now, when we say what is it that you have to comply with, as I mentioned, the directive itself is giving very, very broad parameters, and 2 or 3 of the key terminologies that are used here. The first one is that of appropriate measures. And the way the directive explains, appropriate measures are measures that are capable of achieving the objectives of due diligence by effectively addressing adverse impact in a manner commensurate to the degree of severity and likelihood of the adverse impact. Again, fairly broad and loosely worded terms in terms of what exactly is expected. So the steps that it again illustrates should be done is to put in place codes of conduct, to ensure training, monitoring, compliance, and this whole concept of having an independent validator or verifier is something which we have to account for. The appropriate measure has to arrest the adverse impact. So what is adverse impact? Adverse impact is the actual or potential adverse impact, which could include issues on 2 broad aspects. One is the human rights related aspects, human rights like forced or child labor, inadequate workplace health and safety requirements, or worker exploitation like forced labor, etc. And the second aspect of adverse impact is that of environment. So any kind of greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, biodiversity loss, so on and so forth. What companies need to put in place is a grievance redressal mechanism. So if there is the appropriate measures to address the adverse impact, one of the key things you'll have to have is a grievance redressal mechanism that is accessible to non-state actors and across the value chain, and this would mean opening up the grievance mechanism to any stakeholder who should be able to not only make the complaint but also request appropriate follow-up. What is the company doing to action on the complaint? Opportunity to meet with the representatives of the company at an appropriate level, fairly senior level, in terms of to discuss exactly what the actual or potential adverse impacts are and how that is being addressed, and be provided by the company with reasons if a complaint has been considered founded, That is, if it is a legitimate complaint which the company believes has to be actionable, then what action is being taken? And if it is unfounded, if the company believes it's unfounded, then what really are the reasons why it was considered unfounded? How did the company reach that conclusion is also something which will have to be explained. Now, again, these are all fairly, in a sense, a broad set of issues, but because there are 4 key items that are yet to evolve, and of course there are delays in timelines, which because EU itself has stretched this out on several of their elements of the Green Deal directives. But overall, EU members have to enact their implementing laws, which is expected by middle of next year. And as I mentioned, it's only in the implementing laws that we'll understand the very, very specific components of what exactly companies have to put in place. We are also expecting from the EU level, at the EU level itself, there will be due diligence guidelines and model contractual clauses. The due diligence guidelines will be what the company has to put in place, and the contractual clauses is the clauses that you'll have to build into your agreements with the various entities in your supply chain. There is also a third component. Other than the human rights and the environmental due diligence, a company has to also put in place a climate transition plan and guidelines for that. What should be the components of this climate transition plan? That's also something which is expected somewhere down the line, and the timeline for this is sometime in 2027. The broad thresholds are based on turnover and royalty requirements. If you see the second part of the table below, a table that has been displayed, for non-EU based companies or a non-EU based ultimate parent company, the turnover threshold is 450 million euros within the EU. For a non-EU based company which is entered into or is the ultimate parent of a group that is entered into franchising or licensing agreements, where those agreements ensure a common identity or common business concept, the threshold is, there are 2 elements. One is 22.5 million royalty within the EU and 80 million turnover within the EU. In terms of the implementation for both the human rights due diligence as well as the environmental related aspects, there are reporting aspects. There are 2 components. One is these kickstart again progressively from middle of 2027 onwards, and the broad timelines are what is explained here. The few issues that I really wanted to highlight in terms of other than the fact that you as Arpita has mentioned and Praveen has clearly explained, the from a SEBI compliance point of view, there are certain requirements that you have already put in place. Now, other than that, clearly India is an international actor, right? And we have adhered to most of our international obligations. So if we were to look at purely from a company perspective, as a company, are you required to comply with the various directives, various conventions and multilateral agreements that the EU directive references? So the EU directive has an annex which references 3 international human rights conventions, 8 fundamental ILO conventions, and 11 environmental law conventions, along with there are the climate mitigation targets of the Paris Agreement, etc. Let's take the last components. In terms of a climate mitigation target, neither the Paris Agreement or the requirement of countries require you to do it sector specific. They give the country the liberty to address economy-wide emissions in the manner that it wants to. So India, if India chooses to do more of renewable energy and a phased approach to target energy-intensive industry, that is its prerogative, because what we have to comply with is the economy-wide emission. What we are, however, looking at here is that every entity, so if it is a tobacco entity or a tea or a coffee plantation, irrespective of whether the law in India requires you to do something to achieve India's NDCs or the nationally determined contribution, you have to put in place a climate transition plan. And as I mentioned, the guidelines for that will be evidenced perhaps by the end of next year or early 2027. EU members will have to enact legislations which will have enforcement mechanism, and it will also have penalties, monetary penalties for specific violations. And of course, as I mentioned, the directive gives rights, it confers rights to private actors, which could include trade unions, NGOs, consumers in the EU across. Now, when we look at purely from a compliance perspective, how does India perform with regard to all of these international instruments? So when it comes to the human rights instruments ratified by India, India has actually ratified all the 3 conventions that are mentioned. It is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and on Rights of Child. Now, international law allows every state actor to ratify with certain reservations and declarations. So that is something which we have done, which is standard practice. As far as ILO conventions are concerned, ILO conventions work on what is called the tripartite format, in the sense that the government, the employer organization, and employee organizations, they work together. India's approach, which is the same with EU, which is the same with US, has been that India will ratify only those conventions which we are fully confident of having legal mechanisms in place to ensure compliance. So India has ratified all of the conventions except the ones on collective bargaining. And the reason for that, India has also explained, is because when it comes to civil servants, government officers, there is no right to freedom of association. And this is the same with US. In fact, US has actually just ratified 2 out of the 8 ILO conventions. So ratification itself is not the specific issue that India would need to be concerned about, because even when we talk about freedom of association, collective bargaining, for all other sectors other than the government sector, it is a right that is already recognized. Even with regard to the environmental instruments that the CS3D and the EU Directive Annex talks about, all of these have been ratified, again, with certain reservations in some of the cases. And we have a robust environmental law framework to comply with it. But this is not going to cut the compliance requirements when it comes to the EU directive. Why? Because what they are requiring is that it's not enough to have your own laws and to comply with the laws by yourself. You have to ensure that you have caught the violations in the entire supply chain. If you were to again look at specifically, specific laws that are likely to impact the tobacco sector, so if you were to look at, say, the plant, a lot of these labor laws are already going to be replaced by the new codes, the new 4 codes, which are consolidating, but key provisions would remain the same. So if you were to look at specific requirements under ILO law and compare it with, say, India's specific legislations, whether it comes to regulation of hours of work or how much rest you should have, whether you have access to basic amenities, drinking water, washroom, medical facilities, canteens, creches, recreational facilities, education, housing, health and safety related requirements. All of this is something that our law provides for. This is as far as, if you were to say the plantation itself is concerned. We also have the BD and Cigar Workers Conditions of Employment Act, which again have very, very robust and similar provisions. How this is being complied in relation to the actors in the supply chain is exactly what will really need to be put in place, which is why, the last slide, which is what I started with, is something which every entity in this sector will have to consider. So in other words, you already have systems in place, which is terrific. What those systems will need to do will need to be amplified even further in view of the EU directive. That's really where we are. So I can stop here and open it up.
Thank you very much, Anuradha. As we learn, we also grow. As I can see your presentation, it has been much more clearer, which I think we all understand it now. And there are 3 or 4 core takeaways, which I now put in to have a little bit of a interactive, and then I move on to 2 more presenters. One that you're trying to point out is that we are doing a trade agreement with the EU, and we do have an opportunity to discuss these audit processes because we have already done one with the UK. We have the labor standards, environmental standards in place. But if we put an audit process which is not too rigid, where they bring in their auditors and we do not recognize, that makes things much simpler for companies when there is a recognition between the audit process. That's one key takeaway which has a big implication on the company cost. The second big takeaway is that maybe we have our labor laws and our laws are compliant. Maybe the occupational code will make it much more clearer. So once the domestic system is in place and everybody start following the systems, especially when with respect to the MSMEs and down to the growers and the supply chains, if systems are linked to incentives, like we give so much incentives to farmers and everybody, if systems are linked to incentives, maybe compliances linked incentives, you understand what I mean, rather than incentives without doing anything on the other side. So we are talking about something like compliance linked incentive, and that's something I would like to hear both from the panelists, other speakers, as well as the attendees. If you have anything to say, Rajkumar, can you open up the mic for some time for those who have been listening to us, so that if anybody has any question, please put up your hand. And in this process also, if you can also put on your cameras, it will help us, because Rajkumar needs to click a picture.
Sure. I have a
Yes,
small.
Praveen.
Yeah. Ma'am, I think I have a both one answer and one question. I think
Huh.
I'll go with the answer first. Ma'am, as you were talking about the third-party verifications, yes. So what we do is whatever the reportings, whatever we have, we've been doing our reportings of our sustainability integrated reports. They are being done by third-party assessors like KPMG, and whatever net zero planning has been validated by Accenture, kind of a thing. And as you rightly mentioned, I think Dr. Arpita will also agree with me in the same point what she was reiterating. So the customers are also giving their third-party assessors and auditors. When I say STP, Sustainable Tobacco Program, my world favor, there is something called in-depth assessment. So they are doing this in-depth assessment by third party on alternate year basis. So annual reporting on alternate by third party, and customers are bringing auditors or like PwC, Article 1. So they're also recommending. And as an organizations, we are also taking up reviews in terms of social audits and all the ESG audits like EcoVadis. So the recognized one like EcoVadis, SEDEX, so STP IDA, and we're also taking up multiple studies like with the accredited places like ICFRE institutions and agri and forestry colleges and universities. So we're also taking up engaging all these third-party verifications and studies. Yes, as you rightly mentioned, not only for EU regulations, but for all other regulations, and also coming from customer as a perspective. We were doing before our studies. Now they are also bringing their third-party auditors recommended by themselves, and they're coming and doing it on ground. So probably previously, I think even the EUCS3D stated like 5 years once an assessment. Now I think, let me tell you, some of the organizations are going alternate year. Some of them are doing every year. I'm sure going forward, they'll be here on alternate monthly basis also. And they're coming with interpreters. So it's not about something, sorry to mention the word of interpreters, but the scrutiny with which they're going in is definitely escalating and going forward. And they're doing in-depth assessments. And they're asking us to take up impact assessment studies by ourselves through a third party. So not company claiming our things, reporting our things, whatever the initiatives that we are doing, they're asking for third party. We do are taking up, and I surely take your comment and thing in a true spirit. And yes, we're trying to do that part. And second thing, ma'am, I'm really keen. I think even during the last presentation, I had this question to ask you on the grievance mechanism. Please help me throw some limelight on this, because when we say every stakeholder, because the grievance mechanism, it has to be accessible to the farm labor workers, to beat any stakeholder in the ground. But sometimes the issues that becomes very grassroots level. The issues becomes like the issue between farmer and the labor in terms of payment issues, in terms of safe working environment, or the providing toilets and washrooms, transportation, food. It could be, but these are all real-time scenarios. But such grievances, when they arise, like companies coming and resolving, or the industry, how it should be, how structured it should be, please give us some help, because we're working in a different directions. But covering it at a large scale, because it is not a government approach, because it's an institutional approach, it has its limitations and outreach challenges. I think as a governance mechanism going forward, can you give us some help and guidance on this? It would really help us.
It's at this stage more in terms of very broad principles, because what the grievance mechanism actually is not just the immediate actors who are who are impacted, but supposing, let's take the example that one tobacco plantation within from where you are procuring as a company, and you what is incumbent on you is to make a checklist in terms of whether all the items that you mentioned, whether the access to washroom facilities, whether particularly the gender related access, creche for the women, etc. Is that something which is available, food, rest hours, all of that. So that is one thing to have in place. But the second scenario in terms of what the EU directive appears to be referring to is a mechanism whereby supposing an NGO working on rights-related issues in France or Germany were to assess that in A, B, or C farms from where you're procuring, there are lapses or there are non-compliances. There are two ways to deal with it. One is the EU directive also talks about a little bit in terms of you yourself identifying a particular lapse. And then what you need to do is in your reporting, honestly admit it and the fact that you've taken steps to fix it. So that is more like preempting a situation from reaching as an NGO complaint. But assuming assuming you do that, it's like what the EU wants to see is not just simply reduce or ask you to blacklist farms. No, what it's saying is that have you taken measures that can be mitigated to mitigate these lapses? But assuming we have crossed that bridge and there is a violation and an NGO takes photographs, for example, or documents something and then brings it to your attention. The idea is what they're looking at is you have to make the assessment. Is it a complaint that is founded on good reasons or is it unfounded? Are there any, they have not got the correct information? You present that and you convince them that this is something which has been addressed effectively and that it may have existed, but it's no longer an issue, or it is it never existed. It's something like a misunderstanding or something like that. On what basis are you saying that? So it's more a question of not only making sure you're taking a step to resolve, but to convince them that you have done this and then to demonstrate it. To give a small example, these laws, you may be already familiar and you may already be taking steps to comply with the due diligence laws that France and Germany already have in place. Now, the requirements under EUCS3D is even more, they amplify it many notches ahead. But those laws already have some experience. So what they say is that if you're unable to resolve it at the company level, then you can raise it at the level of the EU member state. So the worst case scenario is to be dragged. If the NGO that is dissatisfied that you have not addressed their grievance well enough and you're still in violation, they can take you to a court in the EU member state, which is why I said we have to be clear in terms of what the member state's law is. Now, in the situations that we did some mapping in terms of how because the laws in EU and Germany, Germany and France have been in existence for the last 7-8 years or approximately. And when we assess them, there have been a few complaints that have come. And some of them have been actually assessed to be not an actual violation, in other words, in favor of the company. But in a few others, the company has been asked to take certain steps to ensure compliance. So it's really more a question of understanding, how we actually arrest all of this, or preemptive measures and proactive measures to resolve if the problem arises, is how I would look at it.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to the same by any of the panelists or attendees? Since we do not have any, we now move into Mr. Chowdary, Mr. Y.A. Chowdary, who is the Secretary of the India Tobacco Association. Mr. Chowdary, are you there? Anu, Mr. Chowdary was there, but he is not there at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. I'll just call him up.
Okay, while he joins in, may I now move into the CTRI? We do have speakers from CTRI sitting here, Dr. Prasada, Dr. S. Kasturi, Krishna. Ma'am and sir, you have been working a lot on sustainable practices. If you can help us to understand what you are working on, that will be very useful.
Thank you, madam. Yeah, I have a small presentation. So whatever you said, that I am going to just share in that presentation. First, I just like to have a what CTRI, and then how last 75 years we are working as a backbone of R&D in Indian tobacco, supporting the stakeholders, tobacco board, and then other industry stakeholders. Next, please. Yeah. This is our genesis, starting from 1936 to till today at different stages and transformations. Next. So 107 tobacco varieties and hybrids are released for yield potential, resistance, and abiotic stresses. And then now we have a potential of 3,300 kgs of FCV tobacco, and then 4,500 kgs non-FCV tobacco yield potential per hectare. And we are the institute supplies more than 90% of seed requirement of the farmers in India, especially about 9 tons of pure seed annually for almost all types of tobacco. Next, please. And then we have we have a site-specific nursery technologies, climate resilient production technologies like drought management measures and drip irrigation, integrated nutrient management for the different tobaccos, and then integrated management Orabanki, and then since so many other technologies. We were climate resilient, or the natural resource management efficiency increasing, so enhancement. These are all the technologies and then tools for reducing the cost of production and drudgery, like topping tool, and then leaf stitching machine, and then bale pressing machine. These are the some of the small technologies or tools and farm machinery. Next, please. So, what's the role of ICR NIRCA in present context? So, studies and environment-friendly practices we involve in developing and promoting less drudgery, water, and fertilizer use efficient application systems to FC tobacco, like drip irrigation and fertigation technologies. So, and incorporating into the gaps. And then involved in developing, promoting trace sealing nursery technology, that is a high productive and for time saving, and advocating resource efficient environment friendly gaps through farm level education, training, and demonstrations to FC tobacco through tobacco board and other industry partners. So in season we will be starting from the nursery to the curing or grading. So we'll be having a seasonal one-to-one interaction with the farmers through trainings and then education, demonstrations along with tobacco board and instituting, and all these gaps will be disseminated to the farming community of mostly FC tobacco all across all the regions. Next, please. So coming to the soil health management, basically to the soil environment, to improve the soil health, we have to enhance the soil organic carbon, to improve soil health sustainability through off-season incorporation of in-situ green manure to ensure minimum soil degradation, soil microbial loss. So this is the major thing, and then this is being practiced through our recommendations, and then through the tobacco board monitoring or their demonstrations, and also the industry are very well involved in this, especially in the FC tobacco growing regions where the soil organic carbon is very low. So that we are doing it, and then we are advocating soil test based fertilizer recommendation, especially for the balanced nutrition applications, to avoid excess NPK and application accumulation. And in this region, FCV tobacco, especially the phosphorus accumulation is seen, and then this environmental concern. So we have recommended for the phosphorus mining by reducing the fertilizer recommendation of the phosphorus and all across the regions. So and then we have soil fertility mapping for FCV tobacco, especially for this FCV tobacco. We have this means this is the one crop in India where we have a full-fledged all region soil fertility mapping for which helps in the balanced nutrient application. And we developed a customized fertilizer for FCV tobacco specifically to save the nutrients or also to avoid the excess nutrient application. And then crop health management, we have developed IPM models, environment safe biological pesticide molecules for optimum recommended doses to keep leaf residue levels within the limits. So we have season wise, every season we monitor, and then every season if there are new pesticide molecules, our scientists, if they recommend, then that we will make into the gaps and to keep the leaf residue levels within the limits. Next, please. And then we have a very robust leaf quality assessment and monitoring of the FCV tobacco across all growing seasons and regions with the help of tobacco board and our scientists. We monitor the cluster wise leaf quality and then pesticide residues, and then season wise we monitor and give the whatever the suggestions, strategies and recommendations to the farmers, tobacco board and or to the industry. And we have a breeding and biotechnology interventions to reduce especially tar and TSNAs, tobacco specific nitrosamines. We have a very good project is going on to reduce the TSNAs in the leaf. And then maybe it transformed into the products also. That's what so preventive is better than cure. So we do this biotechnology interventions to reduce TSNAs. Next, please. So we have extension mechanisms and using the tools like mobile apps to reach each and every individual farmers database inserted into these apps, and then we will give the all types of including FCV tobacco, all the gaps and all. Every season the refined and modified GAPs based on the feedback from the industry, from the tobacco board or the farmers or from the industry, and then the information is being transformed to this type of technology, digital tools as well. Next, please. So coming to the sustainable curing practices and then GHG emissions, where we have actively involved in solar heat energy based curing systems, developing solar heat energy based curing systems for saving fuel wood. And then now we tried for LPG curing technology, and then for the total replacement of fuel wood. And then when you talk about even ESG 15, where we have to reduce the carbon emissions, and then 25% of the carbon dioxide comes from the curing the tobacco. So FCV tobacco. So we have entered into the last almost 7 years. We are working in solar heat energy based curing systems, and then recently we tried LPG and then successfully made it a trial for total replacement of fuel wood, and now we are starting the heat pump based leaf curing technology for total replacement of wood to basically to fulfill the ESG norms and to totally replace wood from the FCV tobacco curing. Next, please. So, and then coming to the carbon sequestration and carbon footprints, NIRCA is working previously and initiated different programs like carbon sequestration potential in tobacco-based cropping production systems and mitigation of GHG emissions in FCU tobacco through efficient crop residue and nitrogen management. And these are in the pipelines. And then some institutional projects are also working on to improve the carbon levels and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the productions, especially in FCV tobacco production systems. These are the specific mitigation adaptive strategies for sustainable tobacco in India. Next, please. So addressing production related human health issues means this is where we are talking about the mostly women working in this harvesting and the next stitching and other loading process. So where there is green leaf sickness or the nicotine toxicity coming to the workers where they directly involving in the green leaf harvesting and all during the day. So there we advocating or recommending, or most of the cases they are implementing the protective measures for and giving aprons and gloves and other instructions to the workers where to reduce this type of contamination or toxicity levels in the workers where during the seasons and all. And then advocating to remove NTRMs, basically NTRMs after they have at the level of grading. So where if you remove all these NTRMs, non-tobacco related materials, which may cause human health issues there in the product level. So that also it's very seriously done by the advocated by CTRI as well as the tobacco board and the all industry level level at the ground level to a village level or whatever cluster level, where in action platform regions all the three we are in tandem to address all these especially these important issues of related to health. Okay, thank you. Next, please. Yeah, implementing and supporting the role of ICR NIRCA is ICR NIRCA would implement, provide support to stakeholders in capacity building and help in complying EUCS3D norms on corporate sustainability due diligence. So this is our we would support implement whatever the complying regulations have to be kept place in the production level at 2 level, and then we'll assist the corporates or the tobacco board from our NIRCA NIRCA level. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I have one question in the board, and we also have the next speakers, Mr. Y.A. Chowdary. So the question, while Mr. Chowdary joins in, and Mr. Chowdary is from the, as I mentioned earlier, from the Indian Tobacco Association. One question that has arrived is that, have any of you raised the U333 this directive about and or discussed it with the Commerce Ministry as the trade agreement negotiations are ongoing?
Ma'am, good afternoon. It is audible to you?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. My camera is not working, or something is wrong in the Zoom. Okay. On behalf of ITA, our job is actually what our CTRI people and ITC has mentioned many things, and we are nowhere concerned directly to the farmer. We are on behalf of association. We calculated whatever the requirement worldwide individually. We collect the data, the tobacco requirement on the FCV, and the same we will forward to the tobacco board. Tobacco board is giving the quota to the farmers. According to that, they are growing the tobacco, and CTRI also technically they are doing a lot of help to the farmer. Sometime farmer is growing more, sometime climate conditions are not favorable quality wise, which is not suitable to the international. Sometime it is more suitable to them. Price fluctuations are going on. But my request on behalf of ITA to the Ministry of Commerce, we don't have any problem to the European countries, but we have a lot of problems on sanctioned countries, which is Russian based. That is pull down to the Indian industry, because our tobacco growing out of growing crop size, 30-40% we are consuming our domestic, and the rest of 65% or 70% is going to across the world. So most of the world is depend on India. We are the second largest producer as well as exporter. So many favors are required from the government, and ruble rupee or something euros are should be allowed by the bank. Some of the big banks are most objecting. They are not allowing any advance payment. It's supposed to export Russia. We are asking the party 100% advance. They are sending 100% advance as euros to us, but our banks are not allowing. Particularly State Bank of India is not allowing 100% advance from the Russia or Russian-based countries, Belarus, etc., etc. So this is a hurdle. This is a barrier to reduce the prices to the farmer. Rest of things are okay, but European, we don't have much problem except Turkey. Turkey, everybody is accepting. We are also not much interest, but other European, we are doing very good. No hurdles on our exports. Crop size, regarding crop size of the India, sometimes farmers are uncontrolled, they are growing because every time farmer depend on the supply link, demand and supply. This year supposed to pay by the trade or global situation, prices are more. Next year they are growing more. The crop control system is required to survival the farmer across the country, because FCV is a 300 million crop size in Andhra and Karnataka. Rest of the crops growing across the country almost 750 million or more than that. So the crop control system is required by the government. That is more help to the farmers. This is my views on behalf of ITI. Any questions, I will answer to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this intervention and point. What I understand from your point of view is that with the EU, you do not face any issues at the moment. But
Yes.
were you aware of this directive, Triple D directive before? Were you aware of this directive?
Sorry?
You were aware of this directive, due diligence directive?
I'm not much aware on that, but we don't have any problems at right now.
Okay.
We'll check with the members. Anything I will forward to you.
Okay. Okay.
Huh?
Anybody else? Any tobacco manufacturers would like to come in? Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else would like to come in, and anybody else wants to ask a question? Anybody else who have any issues? Anybody else who is now, who is exporting to France and Germany may have faced any issues with respect to their due diligence directive? Any questions? Any questions here for anybody to ask? Sangeeta, let me put in your questions. See, Triple D is yet to be in place, so it is not yet in place. So the discussions will be little futuristic when you bring it up in the trade agreement. Probably the way the trade agreements are designed, that it allows countries to have, or trade partners to have, future regulations. If we wait to see the UK agreement, we may have a more detailed picture in place, because UK will be following what the EU may come up with in the near future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just come in a bit?
Yes, please. Yes,
Can you hear
please.
me? Yeah. So, yes, certainly. I think mid 28 is when they want to implement this EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, and therefore there is enough time. But you know very well, Arpita, FTAs are for keeps, right? Once you sign them, you will never be able to, make any changes. Therefore, it is of utmost importance to be very futuristic in your thinking, especially when you're dealing with FTAs. I think that the Tobacco Board or the major exporters have, I don't know whether they have really taken this up with Ministry of Commerce, but now is the time to really do it while the things are still happening, and there's still some flexibility. I think there is some tension between EU members as well on the corporate this I don't know, CS3D, and because each EU member will have to come up with their own regulation and so on and so forth, and some might be more flexible. So I think it would be useful for our exporters to check which is really their market, or where is really their importer based in which member country, and see what will be their upcoming regulation as far as this 3D is concerned. And the other thing also I wanted to say is, especially since you are advising them, that it might be a good idea to read the other EU BTIA chapters as well, because there will be something or the other which will restrain tobacco exports, and especially in the sustainability chapter and so on and so forth. The omnibus has provided some simplification. The EU omnibus has provided some simplification. So there is realization within the EU, I feel, that this extraterritoriality is going a bit too far. But whether our industry thinks it is worth their while to really take it up is a question which I think people who are studying it know best. So that is the only thing I just wanted to check with you. Thanks.
Let me also introduce that, Sangeeta has been very much hands-on because she was the EU nodal person and was negotiating the first step of the BTIA. So her questions are very practical for all of us to think through. Anuradha, you want to respond to some of this or add to some of this?
Not right now. Thanks, Sangeeta. I think that was a very useful and practical insight. But yes, I don't disagree with anything she said.
Anybody wants to discuss this and add it, because this is a very important point that she raised. Anybody, Shupriyo, from your team, anybody wants to bring up any issues? This is a core issue because if you are able to talk about it in the trade agreement, preempt future regulations, bring forward the future stuff, you can soften some of the future trade issues which are likely to come up.
And once again, since the industry is here, I take this opportunity of saying that in India हमको चलता है, कोई भी regulation आने के बाद भी हम थोड़ा सा आवाज करते हैं, government will take it back, we can have some flexibility. लेकिन with EU ऐसा नहीं है, वो 3-4 साल पहले सोचते हैं, आपको chance देते हैं, and once it is done, then it is very difficult to get them to take back. Therefore, now is the time, I think, especially since BTAI अभी भी चल ही रहा है, and EU itself is finding that they need some flexibility. There is a lot of talk about the impact of this on developing countries and how this is highly extraterritorial and extraterritorial not on governments but on businesses directly, with each member state having its own flexibility to create its own, not completely but to an extent, to be more stringent or less stringent. Therefore, the companies can also do some forum shopping here, not forum shopping, but country shopping. For example, through which country would it be easiest to export? Would your importing partner be willing to do that? So, ये थोड़ा strategizing भी अभी करने का chance है. That is what I wanted to say.
No, this is a very, very good point, and this is what is coming out for all the others also. Like for the tea also, we face that, sometimes we think that a regulation will come and then let's take action. This one is giving us like 2-3 years of heads up to actually start thinking about it. Anybody who has another question, anything, because you see Sangeeta is an expert. She had actually negotiated the agreement. Anybody, if you from the industry have any queries, please bring it forward. We can have a discussion. Okay, so we also have received a few questions. One question is for the CTRI. How is CTRI looking to meet the EU directives? And if you are looking to meet the directives, did you estimate, because there is an estimated cost of meeting the directive? Have you estimated the cost of the directive for the farms? Over to CTRI, please.
Yeah, Dr. Arpita, I joined just now, maybe another just last 5 minutes before, and I'm hearing you carefully about this CS3D and you. Yeah, I would like to answer before answering your question directly. I just want to put my view from the CTRI or NIRCA point of view. The directions were really not well aware to the many, including us, about these directives. So it need to be discussed thoroughly into the different forums. Maybe, I mean, thanks to the ICRIER, they brought up now. But since
the time is there. I think we will now take up to discuss point by point what we can adhere and what we cannot do at a time by 2028. Some of the things which are really need to be completely changed, those will be very costly and those cannot be done. So as you said, as Sangeeta said, that some countries in the EU have some flexibility. So those points we need to have a discussion. Our industry partner association, ITA person is here, but yeah, those people also not aware of completely. I must tell you that. So the question what you asked is that whether you done any cost estimations, or we did not do that. We did not do. Maybe we will, in a due course of time, we will really see what we can do. But as my colleague already, I mean, he was presenting that time I joined, and he has shown some of the activities which we have taken in anticipation to, especially in environmental issues, to curtail those greenhouse gases or firewood, those issues. We have already started experimentations, and some have got leads in that. I think those will really fit into those guidelines. But yesterday night I was going through, but some of them are really tough to meet now. So maybe hopefully we will come with some kind of a what I can say framework to meet those guidelines. So the question to your answer to your question is that we are not yet geared up. We are not done that.
Yeah, and also to add to that, and maybe others will help me to correct that, once the directive and the guidelines totally come out, you are not able to do a cost conversion, because you don't know whether they will allow Indian audit agencies, whether the audit agencies will be in the EU. So to come out with a cost estimate, you need the entire information and the cost component in its totality. I'm not sure whether at this, but in some cases we do have a cost component. Here, what we can do is to, at this stage, what I think is that maybe you are better placed to look at the risk components. If you are able to identify the risk under the heads and start your work with the risk, the cost of mitigation may come at the next level. But I want to take that question forward to ask you, have you done the basics like implementing a traceability to the farm or geotagging? Are you able to, are companies doing the basics of traceability systems?
Yeah, traceability we have right now up to the 75 level, 75%. I think we have from the farm to industry, up to threshing, up to the level we have, and we have left only with maybe another 25, less than 25% to do the traceability. I think in the due course of time, we can able to do. I think a lot of work as done by my colleague company ITC also did a lot of work on traceability. I really don't know update on that, how much they could do, but what I know is so far that we have a 75 to 80% traceability. I think Mr. Praveen is here. I think he can comment on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for quoting it out loud.
Hello, Praveen.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, Praveen is speaking now. Thank you, sir.
Right. Hi, hello. Yes, as rightly said by sir, we do have our product traceability. So we do have our demonstration. As I was referring to something called Sustainable Tobacco Program. We have a concept of our village own growing program, and we do demonstrate our product end-to-end traceability, right from the product deliverables till the farm end, what kind of practices they're doing, what activities where it has been grown, all the geo coordinates, all the information, we could be able to demonstrate the product traceability to the customers. We do have that end-to-end traceability in a seamless manner with system integrated thing. We do have that in ground.
Praveen, is it ITC specific, but or is it that there are few big players only in the tobacco chain and most of them have already implemented that?
I may not be able to comment on how the industry is working, ma'am, but as far as ITC is concerned, I think it's a very customized model, and we do have to have our own systems and applications in place to demonstrate that. So we can say that I think from ITC perspective, we do have that end to end.
I just want to add, I think there are a couple of companies, exporters, have this kind of uh, traceability systems. And also they have a kind of a software to log in each activity, and that is to be audited by third party. Those are all things are happening. Only thing what we're missing is the last part. What I understand is the last part from the industry to the consumers. I don't know whether it is there, but it is there from the farm to the crushing. I mean, almost like making a semi product. That level still we have a barcodes, we have a complete scan where from it each farm it comes, where it goes, where it is a bales farms and all those things. I mean, I don't want to go to the full details, but up to 80% we have. And the other, what he said, Praveen said, that other activities of the each farm, adapted villages, they have that. So that
Dr.
is,
Arpita, yeah, yes, sir. Just to extend it, what point Sarah has said. So, in tobacco industry, when we export, we are not exporting the cigarettes per se. So, some fundamental understanding for the forum is that we do give the unmanufactured processed tobacco. So, we do take up the threshing program, so which is the primary raw material for the manufacturing. There, from there, the secondary manufacturing which happens. So, our end product is unmanufactured tobacco. So, our end product from there till the backward linkage is what we demonstrate. So I think doctor's point is that when he says 70-80%, right from that. So from the end product, what we are giving to our customer from there, the forward linkage of how the manufacturers of cigarette manufacturers are doing from cigarette till the back end. If they could be able to demonstrate that, the remaining balance part is what we are doing. I think that's where the doctor is commenting.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes. Yeah. That is very fine, because you can only look after your backward. They have to look at the supply chain till your point. Like,
Yes, ma'am.
that's the responsibility of the importers. Now there is a question, but the name is not coming, so I would come to that. Is there a government or board recognized sustainability certificate or label that Indian exporter can use for the EU market?
I think that certification has to be done by the tobacco board. So far, the regulation part is done by the tobacco board. I think that also the certification part need to be done by tobacco board. Unfortunately, I think they are not joined today. Looks like, but we can communicate. I am also the board member, so I can definitely inform the whatever we are discussing today.
Sir, one more point that we have is basically the concept of gap. We talk about gap everywhere, wherever we look at gap. But are we talking about alignment with India gap? Which gap, or is it a gap created by the tobacco board? Which gap are we talking about when we talk gap?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question and most pertinent question. I can say that the gap is we made now, and it is the gaps are to be now published by the BAS, Bureau of Indian Standards. That is for the Indian conditions. For the one type of tobacco, that is FCV, which is now we are talking more export-oriented tobacco, Flucid Virginia, that is used for cigarette. So that gaps we already done in a systematic in a project mode, and it is to be published. I think it will be published soon, within a month to 1.5 month. So that gaps, not we are not following the international gaps.
Thank you, sir. This is actually a very good clarification. See, again, sir, the rainforest or the deforestation directive as of now do not apply to tobacco, as I understand. But is there a chance that it is going to be applied to tobacco?
Can you ask again? I didn't.
The deforestation directive, as I understand, do not apply to tobacco at the moment. It applies to, say, coffee, but not to tobacco. And is there a chance that a deforestation directive is going to be applied to tobacco? Are they talking about it, the importers and all of them?
So far, not applicable. So far, not applicable. Why? Because what we are telling that what we are using the wood so far for the tobacco is not coming from the forest. It is the mostly the waste wood we are using, either the waste wood which is coming from here and there, the dead woods, those only you are using, and also many of the companies have took a initiative of afforestation. I mean, whenever the people who are go for the use the bonds in the wood, they also put the plants, either eucalyptus or something. There is a very big program is going on under CSR. I mean, grants or maybe other this thing, but there is a serious work is going on in to do the afforestation. So that's the reason I think so far there is no directive. I mean, I think that it is no deforestation issue is not really putting to the tobacco, but at the same time, we are also working on other means of non-conventional energy like electricity, gas. Also, we are trying, and it is seems to be successful. Maybe we will implement 50-50, and maybe in a due course of time, I think it can be done even through without wood also.
Hmm. My next question is that when we are talking about all this lowering of MRLs and everything in case of tobacco, in the case of other food products, in the case of food products, when the MRLs are not met, you have a RFS portal where you can go and check that MRLs are not met. Why is it not met? What is the system of checking in the case of tobacco? How do you know the standards? Which are the standards that you follow when you export to the EU?
Yeah, I think most of the times the MRLs were decided by the Coresta. There is a group called Coresta. Uh, it is a cooperation for Center for Scientific Research related to tobacco. This is a very big group where the many countries have joined, and they have decided the MRL levels for the tobacco to export. And this Coresta guidelines will be so far is getting accepted by every country.
And we are also a member of Coresta?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So it's a standardization like a codex system for food, right?
Yeah, almost like that. Almost like that, I can say. It is like Codex. It is a Chorestra here in the tobacco. So
Yeah.
whatever decides, the new chemical comes and it will be going to the subjected to be all the tests and how much should be the MRL, how much should be the GRL, and when we should apply, what will be the post-harvest interval. All those will be decided there. So that will be sticking to the every country.
So if it is like that it is common and we all are members, then I don't think a major MRL issue should arise with respect to you in this.
I think it should not. I think.
Yeah, that is the point, that the question
Yeah, I
answer
think
is that the MRL is not a major issue.
yeah.
How many farmers are actually getting tagged and traced at this stage? Are all of them 50%, 80% of the export supply chain are already tagged and traced?
Oh, I can say, I mean, it is the farmers level, it is 100%. 100% tagged. All,
Oh,
and as now another colleague also said, because each farmer is registered farmer.
correct.
It's registered with the tobacco board. Those only authorized to grow.
Hmm.
No farmer without authorization, they cannot grow the tobacco here in India, especially FCB tobacco. So all are tagged with phone numbers, with how much they have to grow, how much they will produce each season, how much they will bring to the market, and how much he brought last year, how much this year he's bringing. Everything is digitalized.
Thank you. This is a very important question. I think this is also the most favorite question because many people have asked this question. Any other questions from anybody in the audience? You have any other questions? Please ask, because all your questions have been very nicely clarified by all the speakers. Anybody has any other questions?
Can I just ask a question to the tobacco board?
Yes, please, Sangeeta, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that the industry seems to be very well organized now that you say that 100% of the farmers are already registered, and then there's a quota for how much they can produce and all of that. So then if that is done, if that is already in place, does it make it easier to comply with the 3D directive? Or what really are the real issues that you find in complying with the 3D directive? Since you said you went through it last night, so that is why I'm asking you.
Yeah. So I think it can be done. It is not that difficult, unless very strictly they want to say that we will be. I mean, like just now, Arpita was asking that deforestation. If that is very much stressed, maybe that will become a the big issue. The second thing is the traceability point of view. What the traceability point of view they're talking, I am not clear. Yesterday I was going through, but I am not clear about that. Otherwise, regarding MRL, we are clear. Regarding the child labor and other social, these things are, we are very clear. Environmental issues of like soil fertility and other, these are very clear. Only one is bothering us is the deforestation issue, and the second is the traceability, what level they are asking. That's the only I think is issue. Mr. Praveen can supplement to my answer a little bit more if he can know.
Praveen, before you take up the question, I have another question. Now, this is a very technical question. There are too many people asking me that in tracing and traceability, do you have a QR code? Let me add to that question. Why do you need a QR code? Because when we did the tracing and traceability, some people suggest blockchain, some people suggest QR code. EU system is also in many cases blockchain oriented, but not for all product. High risk product, they have blockchain. So now my question is that you related to this QR, if you answer the traceability along with the QR code, that will help us.
Sure. I think first I'll support Dr. Madhusar in responding to Ms. Sangeeta's question. See, first thing is on yes, tobacco board. When we say tobacco board is looking after the crops which are related to flue-cured Virginia tobacco, and there are also non-flue-cured Virginia tobacco types as well. So non-flue-cured type of Virginia type of tobaccos, tobacco board, the registration process is not there. And in terms of flue-cured Virginia, I think tobacco board registered the tobacco. Yes, 100% of the farmers are registered, but the due diligence, when you say you have to capture all the farm related interventions and parameters, because in India we have our a set of parameters, as doctor was rightly mentioning. All the GAP, good agriculture practices, everything are microzone specific. They vary from location to location. They have done extensive research and given the recommendations. And they're also extending their support for other non-FCV type of crop tobaccos as well. So when we do all this process, yes, some portion of mandatory point of basic farmer demographics are being covered, but EUCS3D is not only locking their parameters to farmer demographics, they're asking for further much more. So they're not only asking for things are in place, one the things that are in place, how can you make sure those things are in place that you have captured are right? So what is your confirmation to that? What is your documentation process to that? And if you have done the documentation, what is the validation process which you have gone through? If you have done the validation, is it by third party? Have you done an assessments? Have you gone through some certifications and programs? So there are much more. There is no end to it. I mean, because the way it is evolving, yes. But yes, tobacco board facilitates and CTRI helps in strengthening the case. This tobacco community is one of the very specific, unique program where none of the crops in India, maybe across the globe, have this kind of hand-holding approach. This is where I think the industry, tobacco board and the CTRI now NIRCA is doing a fantastic job in getting this done. Yes, but there is much more to do, ma'am. Yes. Is I think the first part of the question, but it gives us a very good kickstart to demonstrate this activity. That there is furthermore, as I think that before Dr. Arpita's question in terms of, yes, we do have our own apps. Some of the advanced manufacturing companies have their own application. We've been trying to do the demonstration. Now, from here, I'm linking to the question. It is not a QR code or something, because it's because these products are customized. Different customers ask their products in a different manner, because it is not some one other agriculture produce. The complexity within one product is very vast. So it is grade specific, type specific, and customer specific, different spec parameter ones. So when I give product to the customer, I give it on a code basis. My each and every box that is getting packed, it will have a label with a unique case code information. That unique case code information will give the basic information before traceability comes into the picture. It gives a basic fundamental information of when it has been packed, what is the serial number, to which customer it is going, who has packed it, on what date, and which facility. This is the basic information that we have to provide. But now the traceability going on, we are adding another scan code of information, where if they could be able to scan with the internal facilitation and systems, it could be able to throw out the information of where it has grown, which farmer, where it has grown, when it is harvested, what chemicals has been applied, what not have been applied, water resources, all the parameters, ESG, safety, child labor, all the parameters, then who has bought it, when has it bought, when has it threshed, and all those parameters of this information is flowing forward. That is how we could be able to demonstrate our traceability to the customers. And I think to support what doctor has said in terms of, yes, for the forest regulation, ma'am, I think to answer your question, yeah, EUDR application will be to the tobacco. Yeah, in EUDR, timber is there, and somewhere fuel wood is what we are using is one picture. But at the same time, NICRA is already working on the alternate fuel woods, as rightly mentioned by sir. Industry, as everybody, we are also encouraging, including tobacco board, encouraging plantations. As ITC, we have done so far 1.2 lakh hectares of energy plantation. We call the concept called grow your own fuel, so that you will not depend on the forest thing. So you'll be growing your own fuel kind of concept. Even the alternate fuels, alternate energy conservation activities, with the help of CTRI, with the help of tobacco board, and in industry partners, we came to increase the energy fuel efficiency of the parameters. Yes, there is a likely possibility of coming in, but nevertheless, you're not sure, because coffee would have thought of the same thing. Would coffee be included in EUDR? No. Now it is there. So soya, so similar parameters, there is a possibility. But the guidelines of polygons would closely remains, as the lawyer was speaking before, in terms of polygons, in terms of geospecific informations, in terms of DF and DCF proximity analysis things. Yeah, things are seem likely to evolve further. I think I've answered the questions. I think I've covered multiple.
Sangeeta is basically, Sangeeta wrote that, so typically use style excessive documentation, validation, verification. So this may be increasing the cost to farmers, and that is where you can, this is an item that can be discussed under the trade agreement.
Yes.
If we can create a cost estimate. So Praveen, what they are trying to say, that Commerce Ministry would need to get a trade cost estimate of the standard process. We cannot go and say, oh, we were not doing any process so far. So that objective is not there with us. So maybe we say that, look, we were doing this process, we are fairly aligned. If I do my own audit agencies in my house, the cost will be lower than the same audit agency, because PwC is in India, PwC is there also. That same audit agency, you need to actually acknowledge PwC across both countries. That's the kind of concept that we need to probably develop to lower the cost.
Yes, ma'am, I agree with you. Totally agree. Because
and
yes,
if the industry and the board can think about something which can, a kind of a cost differentials, it will be very good for us to take it up at this stage, because FTAs are like this, that suddenly it may happen, and suddenly there may be lull, and suddenly you may say India has signed with the UK, and then you may hear India is still negotiating with the UK, and will you see the document in July. So before we go into that, it is better that we put our ask list. What Sangeeta is trying to say is that put your ask list in public domain with clear specifications, that if I do it like this is my cost. If I do it there, that is my cost, and so on and so forth.
I just have one point to mention out here is that, yes, I think let me cumulatively take the points of yours, Anuradha, ma'am, Anuradha, Sangeeta's, and doctors, and everybody's. the way we are doing microzone specific recommendations, microzone specific MRLs or GRLs and everything, it is a customized thing with the evolving regulations, with the local conditions, with the developing country conditions, with my law of the land, with the nature of the crop that we are working on. I think we should also have customizable and practical approaches that we should, as an industry, that we should tell boss, these are the practical things, these are the possible things, these should be accepted. You can't expect the same level of documentation, the same level of validations, assessments, audits, cost implications with a developed nation and to a developing nation and to a customized location to a crop with more lenses and less lenses. You can't use the same yardstick for everybody. So it has to be customizable. I think that voice out of the concept, the thought process that you've told, that Commerce Ministry is working on this. If that thing is happening, I think, yeah, that should really happen. That should really help us out, because you can't say the same, you can't use the same lens for everybody. And if you're paying for the premium for whatever you're asking, yeah, well for it. Are you doing that? I think we should ask that question very loud and clear.
I think Anuradha, there are three things here I would like you to think through, because before we are getting into very interesting discussion. See, tobacco is a product where you doesn't have many opportunity to source from other countries where they can, like India and China. So and then China they don't like. So there are not many opportunities to that your market goes away and they are dependent on India. So this is a product where we can actually think about out of the box to make a policy recommendation, which Sangeeta is continuously saying that in our paper we can make a positive recommendations which allow us to somewhat customize and have a good bargaining strategy. Because this product is not something which they can, it's not like rice. They don't like India, they can go to Japan. This is not like that. So we may need to really work together. Praveen, we need your help also in that, to at least revise and relook at the chapters a little bit of, not all the chapters. You don't need to look at rice, coffee, tea, etc. But to the core chapters, to think it through what we need to do. How do we actually show it that it has to be customized, because it has a high cost implication, it has a practicability implications where you are telling every audit agencies have to be brought in from the EU to be kept, taken care of, moved around. So something like that we need to think about creating, to show that this is it itself a massive effort when it moves out of the European Union into a developing country.
Just to, I mean, I completely take on board, and this is something which can and should be done. And while tobacco is in a unique position in terms of a perceived advantage, perhaps the ability to use this as the as an inroad for the negotiations would be good. Having said that, the EU standard response for a lot of these, whether it is CBAM or deforestation or anything, is that it is unlike what Praveenji is saying. It is really a one size fits all. It is there is no specific customization in that sense. But I think what you are saying, Arpita, is that we really need to push. Because what I hear, the industry saying here is that we are willing to comply, but help us achieve what you want in a logical and a cost-effective way. So I think it's a pretty fair ask, and I agree. We should probably articulate it, but not necessarily as a tobacco-specific issue. The advantage of getting it through, at least for tobacco, is higher. But yeah, we can discuss this further.
And both to you, Mr. Praveen, and to Mr. Dr. Prasad, we are very happy to come down. We are very happy to come down, sit with the tobacco book, understand and chalk out a roadmap, bring in more industry players together so that it looks like, we have all the bigger players together in one forum. If something can be done, or it can be done under the aegis of the Tobacco Institute, whichever ages and whichever media we take, we are very happy to come down to actually, once we get this sorted, to get it reviewed at a draft report stage, to get it reviewed, to get it questioned, to get the feedback put in, so that when we put our document in public domain, we should take the Indian interest at the forefront. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And any additional things that we need, Anuradha, which I may have missed, you may like to add?
Sorry, I think that covers it.
So we would like to basically say this is a new baby in town. We don't know what it is. We are trying to understand it, but at the same time, export items of India should get an advantage. If we move faster, we can actually increase our share in certain products. And one of the products that we think we have identified correctly or incorrectly is tobacco. We are looking at tea, coffee, tobacco, and rice to begin with, because there is a lot of work that is going on in cotton already with initiative and funding of the European Union for the due diligence. So we have not touched cotton as of now. We are looking at this. So our next set of consultation is on rice. Okay, so Pallav will be getting in touch. So the next one is on rice. We have done our tea, we have done our coffee, and the next set is rice. Once we do the rice, then we go into more in-depth internal discussions, because it is not often easier to come to forums and have an overarching thought process. We are very happy to come down to tobacco board or whatever, wherever you would like us to meet and have an internal consultation. So we will be in touch with you. We think that this is a crop product which we have an export interest, and we continue to have an export interest. And even before we start the project, you may have seen that the Commerce Minister himself said that this is a priority product for us from a export angle to the European Union. So it is it's a push product, so we need to look at it from that angle. And if anybody have any last word, comment, suggestions, we are very happy to take it.
Yeah, madam, thank you very much for this initiative. I mean, from NIRCA or CTRI, the old name is CTRI, we will be definitely take part, and we will be in consultation with the Tobacco Board and with the oil industry. We may have to have a more discussion, closer discussion on this before making a document in a public, when you are keeping before public. Then we will have more discussions, and the points, the customization, and the points like how much we need to do, how much we need to comply, and how much cost, differentials we have to see. That point only we will be coming out. Otherwise, rest points are, most of them are really covered. So I think we will take that with help of you, and then we'll definitely will make it happen. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We will be in touch. And thank you all for your time and to be here. And thanks all the speakers and all the participants for the interactive session that we have. This is a very new baby in town, so we all are learning as we are working on it. And thank you very much for being part of this event.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.